Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, it's almost 500 days since the abduction of the Chibok girls. Victims' families continue to groan. Nigerian army denies reports of about 50 villagers killed in Yobe State by Boko Haram. A look at the highest paid lawmakers in the world with a pay package of Nigeria's National Assembly in focus. German Chancellor Angela Merkel faces revolt in Parliament over plans to pass the Greek bailout deal.
On business news tonight, the Nigerian Stock Exchange pays more than 7 million naira to investors who incurred losses in the stock market.
And on sports news tonight, FIFA President Sepp Blatter heads back at criticism by potential successor Chung Mong-jun.
It's been almost 500 days since the about 200 girls were abducted from their school in Chibok in Borno State. And since then, the Bring Back Our Girls group has pushed for their return, giving the federal government several ultimatums which were not met. Again today, the group gathered in Abuja, Nigeria's federal capital territory, to demand the return of the girls. The group says it has concluded plans to mark 500 days of the abduction of the girls from government secondary school Chibok in Borno State.
Nearly 500 days after the abduction, we are extremely saddened as the 500-day mark approaches. However, we had never envisaged that our girls would still not be rescued nearly 500 days after the abduction. We are extremely saddened as the 500-day mark approaches. However, in the last few weeks, we have had cause for a rekindled hope. Our confidence boosted, and we are more assured that sooner than later our girls shall return. This as a result of some pragmatic steps our government has been taking recently. Our new president's December 2015 deadline to have the terrorists decimated, what we see as compliance by our military of the presidential order to annihilate the terrorists by November 2015. Even though ever hopeful and expectant of their rescue before the day 500, which is 27 August 2015, we have organized a global week of action to commemorate the tragedy of their abduction.
As controversies continue to rage over the reported killing of about 50 defenseless villagers from Kukuwagari in Yobe State, northeast Nigeria, the Director of Defense Information, Colonel Rabi Abubakar, has come up with a strong denial, insisting nothing like that happened. Colonel Abubakar told Channels Television's defense correspondent, Amaka Okafor, that the report on AFP is completely false. The news agency had reported that 50 people had been killed by Boko Haram, many of them mostly women and children. They had quoted eyewitnesses as saying that the gunmen were escaping bombardment from the military before they moved into the remote village of Kukuwagari, opening fire on the villagers. But Colonel Abubakar says the story is fabricated and untrue. And when President Muhammadu Buhari and his deputy, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, announced the 50% pay cuts, they were applauded. But when a senator from Bayelsa State, Ben Murray Bruce, suggested the same, he was criticized by his colleagues. Premium Times, an online newspaper, has published the salaries and allowances of the lawmakers. From the figures available, each of the 109 senators goes home with 8.72 billion naira, while each of the 360 House of Representatives members returns home with 6.56 billion naira. This is outside funds for newspapers and domestic staff, among other allowances. Well, joining me from our studios in Abuja is the editor of Premium Times, Mr. Mojid Musikilu. And here in the Lagos studios is perhaps a representatives member, Olorinimbe Mamora. But gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the news at 10. I'm going to begin with Mr. Mojid, the editor of Premium Times. Thanks for joining us on The World today. This subject that you have written about in your newspapers raised so much controversy in the recent past. Now your medium has come up with figures believed to be lawmakers' pay. Tell us about these figures that you have gathered.
Yeah, this figure is the figures are publicly available on the website of the Revenue Utilization Commission. So it's nothing. It's just getting the word exactly, and we are presenting it Victoria for. So the figures, anyone can access them from the relevant authorities.
And these are very, well, mind-boggling figures, I would say. The 108, the figures that you have released, some of them being lawmakers' allowances, lawmakers earning 2.48 million naira for Senate President, for Deputy Senate President, 2.31 million naira. But you have made a comparison, though, of lawmakers in the United States as well as lawmakers in the UK, and you say Nigeria is the highest, Nigerian lawmakers are the highest paid in the world. Could it have anything to do with our economy, perhaps?
Oh, I really need to correct that. Premium Times does not believe that Nigerian lawmakers are the highest paid in the world. In fact, we are challenging that assumption. And at the end of our investigation, we're going to at least debunk. We are hopeful that we're going to come out with something different. I think it's the economists that try to suggest that Nigerian lawmakers are the highest paid in the world. We don't believe that. And we're trying to challenge that assumption, and it's something we're investigating. But even at that, we believe that our lawmakers' pay is huge and excessive and unnecessary, and especially given our economy, given the poverty, the widespread poverty in our country, given the challenges we are facing, given their productivity. For instance, since they were inaugurated, you can count on your fingers how many times they've sacked. No committees in place. They're doing nothing. It's one recess after the other. So we really don't think that they deserve what they earn.
Let's come back to Lagos now. Honorable Olorinimbe Mamora, you heard what he said. You have quite high figures in the House of Representatives as well as in the Senate. Can you justify some allowances such as wardrobe allowances that lawmakers are taking home? 506,600 for senators and 496,300 for House of Representatives members, as well as allowances for newspapers and periodicals and so on. Can you justify these amounts of money that you're taking home every year?
Well, thank you, Marachi. Let me correct an impression. I'm not in the House of Representatives. I left the Senate. I was never in the House of Representatives. I was in the Senate. I was in the Senate for 2 terms, and I left the Senate in 2011. So I'm not there. So,
but while you were there, were figures now, as high as these?
Now, let me say this. I'm not here to defend any position, but just to say that a lot of figures have been bandied out there, which may not necessarily be the true position. I think our journalists back home, they should do more of investigative journalism to really find out the true position. But having said that, what I know is that oftentimes the figures that are pushed out in terms of the budget of the National Assembly oftentimes do not take on board that the amount being talked about these figures are not necessarily for the lawmakers, that is the National Assembly as a whole, whether the Senate, or the House of Representatives. But we're talking of the entire budget of the National Assembly, which has to do with the lawmakers elected themselves, that is House of Representatives and the members of the House of Representatives and the senators, and their aides, legislative aides. Then you have the constituency office and the personnel in the constituency office. You also have the national, the Nigerian Legislative Studies, National Institute of Legislative Studies. You have the National Assembly bureaucracy. You have the National Assembly services as well. So I'm saying that there are a lot of components in the budget as a whole. That's much I know. But in terms of individual figures, I cannot really say what these are as at this point in time.
So in other words, you're disputing that these figures are earned by lawmakers alone. You're saying that there are other components.
There are components, yeah, definitely. Because you have National Assembly Service Commission, you have the National Nigerian National Legislative Studies, you have all these other things that I've mentioned.
Would you be kind enough to let us know around what figure lawmakers were earning at the time that you were in the House of Representatives?
I cannot remember all the figures. All I know is that in terms of the salary, which is just about maybe 900 or something in terms of salary. Of course, there are other allowances.
Was that for the Senate or for?
Senate. Because I was never in the House of Representatives, so I wouldn't know what was happening there. I was only in the Senate.
These amounts are put together. I just wanted to get your reaction to the recent amounts that has been put together based on the report by Premium Times that 7.8 billion naira put together is a sum total of the 2015 capital allocation to the power sector and some other ministries. What do you make of that figure?
Like I did say earlier on, I have not seen the figures being talked about. But I must say, that's another thing which I need to make clear, that the National Assembly members, senators and House of Representatives members do not fix whatever, amount, whether salaries or emoluments due to. They do not.
Who fixes it?
Is the national, the Revenue Allocation, Mobilization and Fiscal Commission. That is the body. That's the body constitutionally empowered, because we need to correct the impression as if members, whether in the House of Representatives or in the Senate, they fix this amount for themselves. No, the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission is the body empowered by the Constitution to fix the emoluments of public office holders from the presidency, down even to the councillor. That is the true position. So we also need to correct that. But having said that, if in line with the realities of the moment, there is a need, which I know the National Assembly, particularly the Senate, I'm aware that the Senate already put in place a committee to look into this. And in fact, the recommendation of that committee was that there should be a reduction. But what the final position as to whether the resolution has been passed to accept that or not, I don't know whether that has been done. But I do know that the committee came up with a report to reduce. And even before then, the National Assembly had reduced its budget from what I read in the papers from, I think, 150 to 120 or something, So this is what I know. I'm no longer there now, so I'm not in a position to give you the...
While you were there, you were there, what figure did the Revenue Allocation Committee fix as your salary, your take-home pay?
I think, I can't remember precisely, but it's about a salary. It's about 900 and something, thousand.
Even with all the allowances put together, how much was that?
The salary I'm talking about.
Salary, but with all the allowances.
I can't remember the details.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, let's go back to the Premium Times editor, Mr. Mojid Musikilu. I'm so sorry for mispronouncing your name. Well, you have released this report. Is there is there an aim to this? Is there something you hope to achieve with lawmakers, actually with Nigerians knowing how much lawmakers earn? What would you hope, what were you hoping to achieve with this?
No, but this is public record. I'm sure the Senator Olorunimbe Mamora knows as much as we do that this is what he earned. What we have released was what he earned when he was in the Senate. And so we're not saying basically anything new. These records are there. Nobody is talking. This is not, we're not even bothered about what they legitimately earn in salaries and allowances. What bothers us more is the legal allowances, which we didn't even compute in these reports, which goes into several millions quarterly. Nobody has been able to tell Nigerians who approve that particular allowance for them. They take it more than 100 million, each of them, every quarter. They call it office running costs. I think that
we seem to have lost Mr. Mojid Musikilo, but you sound like you want to react to what he said.
I don't know the figures he's talking about. Yeah, I've told you whether he's talking of figures from somewhere, but I don't have the details of what he's talking about. That's what I'm saying. And I have made the point that the National Assembly, whether the Senate or the House of Representatives, does not on its own fix salaries or emoluments. That this is a function of revenue allocation, mobilization and fiscal
But what do you think when you hear your other lawmakers earn this sort of amount of money? I mean, and the president says that you need to. The president has said that he will be cutting down his own salary, as well as the vice president. Do you think the lawmakers should take a pay cut?
That's what I said, that earlier on, that even the National Assembly on its own had already, reduced its budget, I think from 150 or so to 120 or something like that. But Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari has laid a very good example by, on his own, agreeing to have a pay cut to the level of 50%. And I think that's a very good example, which the Vice President himself, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has followed suit. And I have just said that in tandem with the realities of the moment, the Senate, to the best of my knowledge, has also put in place a committee that has even recommended a reduction. That much, from what I follow, I'm not there, but at least I try to follow what is going on.
Okay.
So, and I'm aware that there is a recommendation on table before the Senate right now to do a further reduction on the emoluments of senators.
We'll get back to you on that, but let's go now to Abuja, where Mr. Mojid Musikilo was telling us about the aim of this study, this report that has been released in Premium Times. But just before you go on, could you give us more details about your findings?
Well, you basically highlighted our findings, and our findings is that they take home basic salaries, and then they have 870%. I mean, our senators, 870% of their annual salary is what they now take home as allowances, whereas the tax they pay is just a function of their basic salary, and then added to what we call illegal allowances, which they call running costs, which I would have loved Senator Mamora to talk about, whether when he was in the Senate, whether he did not take home over 100 quarter, known as office running cost. So our findings basically is what our lawmakers earn. They earn a total 8.72 billion a year in salaries and allowances. Then how the senators the 109 senators earn 2.14 billion in salaries and allowances, while the 360 members of the House of Representatives pocket 6.58 billion in salaries and allowances. And when you look at that, when you compute that, the allowances they take is about 870% of their annual salary. And that's for the senators. For the House of Reps members, they take 820% of their basic salary as allowances. And then you begin to wonder. Then they pay tax on just their basic allowances. The allowance on just their basic salaries. The allowances are non-taxable. And so you begin to see that, and then you compute that with their productivity. At times, they may not pass as much as 50 Bs a year. They are always on recess. And then you wonder whether they are really offering service or they are just going to the National Assembly to make money.
Mr. Mojid Musikilu, thank you for joining us on the News at 10. Mr. Mojid Musikilu is the editor of Premium Times, and he published his paper published that report on the lawmakers' salaries, as well as the supposed pay cuts by President Muhammadu Buhari and Professor Yemi Osinbajo. Senator Nimbe Mamora, I'd like to get your last words on this. You obviously disagree with everything that he has said. When he said that lawmakers take home almost, well, he said you used to take home almost 100 billion naira.
I never did that.
You disagree.
I never did that. That much I can tell you. But you see, let's get what we are saying clear. I'm not here to defend myself. I'm not on trial. That's not the issue. But we need to get certain things clear. The point I have made, which I will reiterate. One, that the budget being bandied around oftentimes does not take cognizance of the components. I've just told you that National Assembly, House of Representatives and Senate, you are not just referring to elected members. You have other components. I've mentioned the National Assembly services. You have the aides of the lawmakers. You have their constituency office and the personnel, and you have the National Institute of Legislative Studies. All these are under the National Assembly. That's one. Two, he mentioned the issue of the issue of productivity. Productivity, it's another thing.
And we will provide.
And that it is the revenue mobilization allocation and fiscal commission that fixes these things.
Senator,
but I am for reduction in tandem with the reality of the moment.
And that will be your last word. Thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10. Senator Olorinimbe Mamora is a former senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And we're part two after the break. President Muhammadu Buhari challenges Ministry of Communications Technology to develop revenue generation potential for the sector. Please join us again.